This is the Free Heel Life Podcast, episode number 100. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Free Heel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And my friends, we made it. We're to the triple digits. And I'm so stoked. This has been such a wild ride. Talking to some amazing guests, talking to other Telemark skiers, talking to people that have been along the Telemark history and modern Telemark history, event organizers, people doing stuff in their communities. I can't express enough how excited I am to have been able to have the opportunity to talk with all these amazing people over these last 99 episodes. And I'm just so fired up that we got this far. And thank you for listening out there and always checking in every week to see what's going on. Really, really appreciate your support. And from one Telemark skier to another, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that we've got this community and all you free heel lifers out there that have supported our shop, supported the projects that we're doing, supported me over all these years of doing stuff. And I'm just so grateful that we've been able to do this podcast and document, a lot of it for me is selfish, and I get to document a lot of history and talk to people and figure out what they were thinking way back when, and some more modern folks that are doing stuff today. And I encourage you, if you like the podcast, if you like the episodes, you got a lot of them you can go back and check out, and I hope you will. And you can always hit me up, podcast@freeheellife.com. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your favorite episode was. Maybe let me know an episode in the future as we head on to the next 100. That sounds wild. I love it though. So we're heading into week 3 of the retail shop being open in Salt Lake City. Be sure to reach out with any of your questions. If you don't live in Salt Lake, that's totally cool. Maybe you're thinking about purchasing something, but you're just not sure. Hit up the team, customer service at freeheellife.com. They'll get back to you. They'll help you out. They'll walk you through the process, and always down to help you out. And we really, really appreciate your support. So with that said, episode number 100, I'm so pumped. And this is such a great guest to have for episode 100. Someone I've known for a really long time. And I'm pumped for all of you to hear the conversation. So my guest today, he grew up in Boulder, Colorado, where he actually grew up with parents that Telemark skied and took him on a lot of fun, low-angle hut adventures in the area. He continued to Telemark ski through high school, where he finished out his last years at the well-known Colorado Rocky Mountain School in Carbondale, Colorado. After his secondary education, he eventually landed in Lake Tahoe teaching snowboarding at Sugar Bowl. And it was around this time that he started competing in the United States Telemark Ski Association, otherwise known as the USTSA Big Mountain Telemark Series. And it was here that he began to meet many other like-minded knee droppers that were pushing the limits of what could be done on free heel gear. He's been featured in countless Telemark ski movies, magazines, and events. And through the early to mid-2000s as an athlete, he helped influence product development from companies like KARHU, G3, and Patagonia. So please welcome to the podcast my friend Lorenzo Worster. All right, Lorenzo, welcome to the Free Heel Life Podcast, my friend. How you doing?
All right, thank you. Doing well. Yeah,
I'm stoked to have you on, man. You've been on my tick list for a while, and I'm excited to get you're sort of this in-between figure of history that I was really excited to talk to. So, but yeah, how you been, man? You're still living out in Tahoe, right?
Yep, and living in Truckee, and excited about winter. We just had a little bit of snow the other day. It just got the little crispness in the air, and the leaves are all turning, which I'm excited about because they didn't turn brown and just fall off because we've had drought for a while. So I'm hoping that this is a sign of maybe some wetter winters coming up.
Yeah, hopefully. You guys, yeah, and it can turn on so quick there. That's what I always admire about you guys. You guys will be like, we're having a bad winter, and then there's like 8 feet of snow, like out of
Right.
nowhere.
Yeah.
But
Totally.
did you guys have Were there fires on the north end of the lake, or was it only on the south shore?
We were sandwiched. We had the Dixie, not on the north end of the lake, but north of us.
Okay.
So up north of Quincy, and we had the Dixie fire. And so we had, if the wind blew south, we'd get smoke from them. If the wind blew north, we'd get smoke from the fire in South Lake. So it was intense. We were worried about not starting school, and Julia and I are both teachers. So worried about not starting school because of COVID or being on distance learning and all that. But then we canceled the first week of school because of smoke. So it was like a whole different dynamic.
Yeah,
to add into it.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. I know. I saw that stuff that was ripping through Sierra at Tahoe, and I was like, oh wow, that is crazy. Especially because I know the tree skiing's so good out there, so I'm like selfishly thinking like, oh my gosh, it's all going up in smoke. Oh no.
Using like snowmakers in order to save lifts and stuff like that. It was pretty intense.
That's crazy. Well, and so what grade are you teaching now?
I'm teaching sixth grade. Teach sixth grade at a school called Sierra Expeditionary Learning School, and it's a charter school. And we're all about combining all subjects into units of study and having like real world products at the end. So actually my students make a podcast every spring about climate change and the physical science of climate change. So it's pretty fun.
Sixth graders doing podcasting. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Times have changed.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. Just the ability to have that technology and I mean, that's such a cool life skill. I mean, I think we'd have like speech or like speech class, where you get up and give a speech in class, but to be able to podcast to people, that's pretty cool.
It's pretty fun, and the kids get into it because they feel like it's something that's more than just for a grade for me, and they get into it because they feel like they're making something for the broader public. And it's, I put it, it's so easy to make a podcast these days because you can get a little lapel mic and it makes the sound amazing, and they record it in their Chromebooks on Soundtrap. They can edit all of the tracks and add in music and sound effects and then upload it to SoundCloud, and you have a podcast. And we've had people all over the world listen to our podcast, and I'm blown away all the time. Like, wow, I thought I was just going to put it up there and it was going to stagnate, but there's like Sage's cousin in Norway is listening to a podcast from 2 years ago. Like and Sage is my son, but yeah, it's so funny. Wow. It's really cool.
That's rad. So so you can actually get it. Is it just on SoundCloud? Is that the place to find it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. SoundCloud. The first year they called it Kids Talk Climate. Let's see. The second year they called it the Green Generation. Last year they called it the Regeneration. But it's all under my L Worster at truckycharterschool.org email. So I think it's associated with that somehow, but
that's dope. Yeah, hopefully some people will check it out. That's awesome. I always love when kids do stuff like that, and I'm sure they'll be able to look back and really appreciate that their teachers actually, kind of put something together like that kind of documented, other than just having the papers from school stuff in a box somewhere. You can actually go listen to yourself talk about stuff. So that's cool.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that kind of parlays nicely into how old we are. No, but
super old.
Nah, we're young. We're super young. So, but
I don't know, man. I remember going to Europe with Ty Dayberry, and he was like a 16-year-old little grom, and he was falling asleep in the corner at the bars, and we were all drinking beers, and we'd like bring him home and tuck him in, and he just had a baby. I'm like, what?
I know. It's so crazy to think of that was. I remember trips like that with him for sure. He was super young, and
yeah.
I think the first time I've had him on the podcast a couple times, and yeah, I think I talked about my fond memory of meeting him. He was like 14, and he was hanging out with you guys in Bones, and He got mad at me because I was smoking cigarettes. It was super.
That's awesome.
I was like, "Who are you?" I was like, "Why are you yelling at me?" You know? Oh, that's funny. But so you're not? Are you from Tahoe originally? I thought you're from Colorado.
No.
You're from Colorado?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I grew up in Boulder, and we started skiing at Eldora. It's a little like backwoods mountain resort that's right up above Nederland. And yeah, I mean that's really where I got introduced to telemark skiing was the Nordic team. I was on the Nordic team, and our coach would send us off into onto the trails to train, and he'd tell us to do this many kilometers and, some fartleks and some speed and some sprints. And we would like make a quick U-turn through the woods and go to the bunny hill and make telly turns down the bunny hill, which we got in shape. And, but it was a little different workout than the coach had called for. So, but yeah, that was, Colorado skiing. And then my parents were big telemark skiers, and leather boots and hard wax and skinny skis, heading up to the huts and getting some really fun, like 20-degree ankle deep cold smoke turns, like link 10 of them together, and you were super psyched. And yeah, so it feel that Colorado sort of hut trip, low angle POW is definitely, that's what I think about when I think about growing up, but also where I kind of my roots for skiing as well. So,
and were your parents both from Colorado, or did they move to Boulder before they had you?
My dad was from Painted Post, New York, and my mom was from Larkspur, California.
Oh, okay.
And so they ended up in Colorado, and we're living up in Gold Hill, which is another little sort of hippie mountain town, sort of gold mining town turned hippie mountain town, and lived up in Gold Hill for a while. And then
Gold Hill.
Yeah, I ended up staying there, but I never would have thought that I would moved out to California from Colorado. I was always like, yeah, Colorado.
Yeah,
I'm gonna live here for the rest of my life. But
is Gold Hill up by Nederland then, or in that area? It's
north. Yeah, pretty much. You're right, like northwest of Boulder. Now Nederland's a little bit more directly west, and Gold Hill's a little bit more north.
That's a
similar.
Yeah, that's a cool town. They're a cool zone. I still got it. I don't know if you are you familiar with like the Dead Man Festival in Nederland?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on my tick list. So we don't need to go into it, but look it up, okay. People. Look it up. It's
funny.
It's a weird story, and I think I came across that years ago, and I was like, what is this? Like, that's so bizarre.
Of all the reasons to have a party.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't wait for people to look it up, and they're going to be like, "Oh my god,
yeah,
what is that?" That's funny. Well, so when you were doing, that's so funny. I swear, like a lot of like our generation and a lot of you guys came from Nordic and were like on Nordic teams or walking around on Nordic skis. Was that in high school in Boulder that you were on the Nordic team?
Yeah, all the way up through high school. I think I raced one more year in college, but then I didn't have the drive to train all year long, and I was kind of a 3-season train athlete, and because I like to do other stuff in the summertime, and I didn't like running very much, and so I'd mountain bike and play and work at a bike shop, and never really got to the upper echelon. And I just figured that there was something else out there that I wanted to accomplish, but it wasn't going to the Olympics for Nordic skiing, wasn't in the cards. And so I kind of bowed out a little bit, but also knew that I was like, all right, well, that was my time, and now I'm going to do something else. So I kind of moved into the next step, I guess.
Well, okay, so here's a question. I, for some reason, thought that you were one of the early CRMS kids. Is this not true? You were?
No, it's true. Yeah.
Okay. So
I was on the Nordic team, but I would train with the tele team sometimes.
And
I wasn't full on tele team.
So you did like the end of. So for those that are listening that haven't listened, I had K.O. Ogilvy on from the Colorado Rocky Mountain School. It's up in Carbondale.
Yeah.
And and that's why I was kind of saying, like, you're sort of this man of mystery. You're sort of this in between of the historical timeline for me. And yeah, so I seem to remember that you kind of almost predated the tele team there, or you were there right when it started, right?
Yeah, it was kind of before the big mountain scene got going, and so I would join the tele team for like gate racing at Sunlight Ski Resort and bump racing, and that was always pretty entertaining to watch. Just bump racing on Telemark skis, and they're skinny and super comps with plastic cuffs and just the athleticism to try and point it straight down the hill and hold on as long as you could and pull off some sort of air and make it through the bot. Like it was good. I think the gate racing still had the Rapaloosa where you come down the gates over a couple jumps and then you come back up and you skate back up the hill and around another gate and then finish. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, and they've still got that. So okay. So did you go to CRMS like at the end of high school and actually like live up there, or how did that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Full on dorm, living in the dorms, boarding school, and the last 2 years of high school.
Okay. Was KO there already, or was he not teaching there yet? I'm kind of trying to because this was probably what, like mid 90s, early 90s?
Yeah. 92 through 94. I graduated in 94. And right. I think that was before
he got there.
It was like right when KO was starting, but I don't think KO was coaching the tele team. But I knew KO, and his sister was there when I was going to school there. And yeah, he was just in the area, so I knew KO and part of that community, but I don't think he was teaching there, or he had just started or something like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because for some reason I had that in the back of my head that you were there, but you were like part of like a different era than kind of like Max Mancini, and like there was kind of just this next generation that was like right after that, like late 90s, early 2000s. So
and that was when it really started. Yeah, you really started hearing about the CRMS tele team, and they were going to all the big mountain competitions, and they would have a field of juniors that was like twice the men's field. And
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, and so okay, so you're Nordic skiing primarily, and then you've kind of gotten into telemark like towards that section of high school, and then when did you start fully, or were you already like telemarking at the resort primarily at that point, or?
Yeah. On days off, I would, that's what I would choose to do. And like I said, it always been kind of, one of those things that I grew up with and my parents had done. And, so going to the resorts, I would mostly telemark ski, but then I also started teaching snowboarding, in college, just because I went up to Eldora, tried to get a job teaching telemark skiing, and they were like, we have 2 instructors and they work 6 days a year. So you could teach snowboarding if you snowboard. And so I jumped on a snowboard and taught snowboarding for about 8 years.
8 years? Really?
Yeah.
At Eldora?
At Eldora for a bunch of years. And then I moved, I studied abroad in Norway and taught snowboarding over there. And then when I moved out to Tahoe, I taught snowboarding for a couple years.
Oh wow! I didn't realize where in Norway did you go?
I studied in Oslo.
Okay.
And there was a little ski resort on the backside of Oslo. Right as you come out of town, like you could take the subway turned into an above ground train, and you could take that to the end of the line, and there was a little ski resort that went off the backside of Oslo. And I think it was Trysil or something like that. But
wow.
Yeah, that was kind of a golden time for snowboard instructors because everybody needed them, and you could get a job anywhere just as long as you knew how to strap one on.
That's amazing.
But,
wow, that's great.
yeah.
I didn't realize you lived in Norway. So were you there for what, like just a year doing study abroad?
Yeah, just a year. Yeah, I learned Norwegian. Took Norwegian for a year beforehand, kind of because of that sort of Nordic roots and Nordic skiing, but also the birthplace of telemark skiing. And I just was intrigued by Norway. I had foreign exchange students stay with us in high school, so I wanted to go over and see what it was all about.
Wow, that's cool. Did you get to travel? Like, did you ever make it to Morgadal or any of those places while you were there, or go way up north?
We did a little bit of traveling, not as much big ski trips, but they have an amazing hut system there as well. And so I did a little spring hut tour with a girlfriend of mine, and the huts are awesome. I mean, you can show up and you don't even have to have any food or sleeping bag or anything, and they have it all there. Bedding and all the food that you could want. And so you can travel really light and go for longer distances. And it's just beautiful. More of just like where I went was kind of rolling tundra, not very many trees, easy to get lost. But they would put these sticks into the snow, and you'd go from basically stick to stick. We ended up in a snowstorm and barely could see from one stick to another. Got kind of lost, and all of a sudden we look over to our left and there's a chimney blowing smoke, and we're like, what the hell? And so we followed this little trail down, and it led down these steps into the snow, and there's a full-on hut that was buried in the snow, and these two old Norwegian hunters, and they spoke no English, and so we had to like use our Norwegian to figure out where we were and where to go, and they gave us some like reindeer meat and stuff.
Oh my gosh, they're probably like wondering what the hell you're doing out there. They're like in a warm place eating reindeer meat, and you're like, hey, what's up? I'm from the US.
We're lost. No, they knew where they were used to it. They were like, oh yeah, you got lost, just go this way for 100 yards and then keep following that for another kilometer and you'll get there. We found it.
That's amazing. I love that. So, well, that's cool. So then you do Norway. I didn't know about that. That's a cool little tidbit of history. Do you still speak Norwegian? I guess that's always the question when you live in another place and it's been like 2 decades.
Yeah, it's a little rusty for sure. The most Norwegian I speak is when my wife's brother lives in Norway. And so when we Skype, then sometimes I'll speak a little bit of Norwegian, but they're always, I mean, Norwegian is one of the least useful languages in the world because 99% of Norwegians speak fluent English.
Yeah.
As good or better than you speak it. So it's like, it's fun to like chat here and there, but
Yeah, it's kind of a slog through it, and eventually most of them are going to be like, so do you want to speak English now? Or
yeah. That was the hardest thing going there because they wouldn't want to practice. They'd be like, or they wouldn't want to speak Norwegian with you. It would be like, oh, well, let's just speak. I knew that I had mastered a small slice of Norwegian when somebody continued a conversation while waiting for the train for at least like 10 back and forth. And then they asked me, oh, are you not Norwegian, right? And I was like, yes, I made it. I did it.
I have succeeded. That's amazing. Well, so you get back and then you said you did move out to Tahoe and kept teaching snowboarding. Was that kind of, well, I mean, you're still there, so I'm assuming that was kind of home base from then forward, right?
Yeah. And interesting, I mean, I moved out to Tahoe and I was blown away. I mean, growing up in the continental snowpack, and you're just paranoid every time you're going out midwinter and looking at anything steeper than 30 degrees, you're just tippy-toeing and it can ruin the whole winter if you just have a shallow snowpack and a cold fall, you're done. And it's just depth horror all winter long. So moving out to Tahoe where, you'd be paranoid about a certain layer of suspect. And then you'd get 9 feet of snow and it would squash down to nothing, and it's thick and the whole mountain is reset, and there's none of the like 6 inches of snow on top of ice bumps with 6 inches more snow, and you have to wait until there's sort of a series of systems come through to refresh. It was like overnight, it could be a whole new mountain. So it definitely, for what I wanted at that point, which was to push my skiing and to see, partially see how far I could take it as far as in the competition series, because that's when I started getting into the big mountain series. But then also just, I really loved that it opened up this terrain and you could ski more creatively to a certain point because there was more terrain open, and some of the boundaries that previously looked at stuff and been like, oh, well, that's all going to just peel away when I hit that. Then you kind of knew that it was slathered on there, like it's a different type of snow. It leads to a different type of skiing and a different way of looking at looking at lines and looking at peaks and how to ski them, that it was really fun. And is one of the main reasons that just I kept coming back. And it just opens up a whole new world.
Yeah, that maritime snowpack is very different than Utah, Colorado, a lot of these areas. I mean, just the way the features form, like you said, it just kind of slather is a good word. It's just kind of smeared on the rocks and it really is different for people that probably haven't seen that. It just shapes everything very differently, and I'm always surprised when I see powder days out there, because you guys get good powder days, but everyone always hears like Sierra cement and all, that kind of vibe, but there's deep days out there. You guys it just packs differently.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that happened right at that time period was that all of a sudden skis got a lot fatter and wider, and Sierra cement turned into something, instead of like, oh, this is super challenging and not as fun to ski, all of a sudden with wider skis, it just became that much more approachable and kind of opened up that opportunity as well. So it wasn't as big of a deal when powder doesn't last very long out here for sure. I mean, we'll get a cold spell and it'll stay a little bit longer. You can go down to the east side and the Eastern Sierra, and there's, you can get higher and you can find some north facing goods, but for the most part, it's definitely a shorter window of good snow. But yeah, there's definitely some good storms. I mean, I've had some of my best days where it's just over the shoulder blower on the west shore of Tahoe, and it's as good as anything I've had in Colorado. But then, if you don't get there in the first 2 or 3 days, then you've kind of missed that window.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what was your first Telemark competition then? Like, because this is probably, I'm just trying to place it on the timeline. Like, you're probably getting out in Tahoe, I'm guessing, like kind of late 90s. I don't know, 90.
Yeah, 99, I moved 99.
Out. Okay.
Yep. And I think my first competition was in 2001.
So was it in the USTSA series? Is that when you started showing up to those things?
Yeah.
With Jeff Wright?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So that's okay. So and the other piece of the puzzle I was trying to figure out is, did you meet Bones, Josh Murphy, for those people that aren't historically plugged in, but did you meet Bones in Tahoe before the competition, or did you start going to these competitions and then end up meeting Bones in Tahoe? Because he was kind of plugged in with that Alpine squaw crew, I guess. Yeah, if I remember right. But yeah, how did that all come about? How did you guys get to know each other?
Spot on. And I think that was the other thing that kept me here, was that I started doing these competitions and I met Bones and I met Stefan and I met all these other skiers that were filming and taking photos, and I met photographers and just kind of got into this community of Tahoe skiers and filmers and photographers who are interested in it was just such a great group of people who were interested in getting together and making, I mean, I don't know, I'm going to sound super cheesy and people are going to think I'm, whatever, but like we were getting together and making art. Like we were trying to make something unique and, something that hadn't been seen before, or something that we felt like was, the captured what it feels like when you're out there with your friends skiing, and skiing lines that you're proud of, and that then you can see on the big screen. And I mean, it was once I made it, started competing in the competitions, and it wasn't really competing that kept me coming back to more competitions. It was skiing with all these other amazing skiers who were super creative in how they saw the mountain and how they skied it. And really, once I got into filming, and that opened my eye to, other ways to ski with another, these awesome skiers, and have that same camaraderie and feeling, but without having to, go 43rd down the same run that everybody else had gone down and hope nobody had skied right where you were going to land. Then, and it was less the competition, more the camaraderie. So once I got the sort of open the door into filming and into more of that side of things, I quickly went more of that direction, and I started judging and helping out on that side of thing more than competing.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I think back, because I came in a little after you guys, but I think of all like when you're talking about the camaraderie, and I remember there's so many guys that came out of that zone, that guys and girls, but I'm thinking like the Scott Murrays, I'm thinking Mark Sanders, blanking on who was the coach. He was a coach back then, like a mogul coach. He was in Bones movie. It's right on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of his name. kind of reddish hair. Anyways, I'll think about it. But I'm there's so many
blanking his name, but
there's so many standouts where, you guys were skiing hard, man. It's crazy. You think about some of those competitions, and I think when people see it today, like young people, like we'll throw in an old video and stuff. You guys were like sending it. It was a really interesting time, because especially in Tahoe, because you've got sort of this free ski movement going on, 2001, and I don't think it's cheesy at all. You guys were literally capturing this really interesting time of Telemark history. Like you said in the, when you said talking about Sierra Cement, there's this transition from skinny skis and what people thought they could do on this equipment, and then there's this crew of you guys there, and there's the Colorado group and all over the place. But it was really a pretty pivotal time in terms of equipment and like what people were willing to try on it, and you had young athletic people doing it, that must be a pretty memorable time, I would think, having been a part of that and just seeing it firsthand,
Yeah. It feels like, when I look back, and I think that everybody, there's the like proverbial guy who still reminisces about his high school football team senior year, but I look back and I'm like, that was the heyday. That was amazing. Everything was going off. People were doing things new every day. Like all of a sudden people were in the park and they're sliding rails and they're like making up new tricks. And it was really fun, and it felt unique, and it felt special, and it felt like we were just a part of something that was there was a sort of big movement in the Telemark world. And it was super fun.
Yeah, and that kind of the one thing, another kind of predated me a little bit, but how I first got to know was at KARHU, and I'm kind of curious, like how I guess for all the young folks out there that don't know what KARHU is, it was an amazing it was an amazing telemark ski company, had a lot of history. And I had Tom Carter on here. He was one of the 80s KARHU guys, but and Alan Bard, his partner, and some stuff like that. But then kind of when I met you was primarily through that, and I'm curious, how did you get hooked up with KARHU? I mean, they were on the East Coast out of Burlington, and I've kind of always wondered, like, how did you get that connection? Because you kind of predated me and Dayberry and a couple other guys. Tell me the story of that.
The OG, man.
The OG.
The PG. The Pete Gallup.
Oh no. I was wondering about that.
He and I were skiing together after a competition, and he's like, "Oh man, this is awesome. You should be on the team. I'm going to talk to them about you." I'm just like, you know how Pete gets, and he just like was super fired up, and he like brought me on, and I definitely owe debt of gratitude to him because I was a super shy. I mean, I still am a shy guy, but I was really shy back then, and it was challenging for me to approach. I was starting to approach ski companies and clothing companies and stuff like that, but it was hard for me to really talk about myself. And I'd be like, "Oh yeah, well I did really well in this competition, but I didn't do well in that one, and this one I did that." And I'd start like talking about like how I could improve, and that's how my mind was working. But I shouldn't have said those things if I was trying to get sponsored. But but Pete kind of did the talking for me in that case, and really took me under his wing and brought me on, and all of a sudden I was getting free skis, and that was a first for me, and it was really kind of opened the door and my eyes to how it could be more than just something that was fun. And I tell my students when I'm teaching that I used to be a professional telemark skier, and that's definitely a stretching of the term professional. I had made some money at one point with a little bit, like enough to pad the hard work that all the summer work that I had in order to take winters off, but it wasn't enough to like put me in the savings, but it was enough to have take winters off and to be able to travel at the drop of a hat and ski as much as I could all winter. And so kind of that intro from Pete pulling me into this the KARHU team, and it just kind of blew up from there. I mean, it was that was another really what felt like a door opening up that into a time when they were just all about pumping telemark images and the idea of telemark skiing out to the masses through media, and throwing their name in magazines and making skis specific to telemark, and like having Decker jewelry like create their graphics for their team ski. And I mean, it felt like it was something that was just had this synergy and flow where everything was coming together to make this magical moment.
That really was, that is a magical moment, man. And I mean, part of why I like having these conversations with guys like you is I think it's really, I mean, for me, just documenting history, and that is one of those things where I think about, and I'm glad you brought up Pete. I need to get him on the podcast. That guy, he is the OG of like getting sponsored. I mean, Ralph
Lauren, like,
the Polo RLX, I think that whole thing was crazy, but that brings up a good point, because you, like I said, you kind of predated me in the KARHU team days, where you were probably there when the Jack came out, I think, or right around when it came out, right?
Yeah, those were the funniest thing. Just like the first time I put those on, they were this orange tongue depressor. Like it looked so wide. I was like, what the hell am I skiing? These are crazy. And I put them on for the first time at Alpine Meadows in a competition, and I was just tripping out on the lift looking at these things, thinking like, wow, I'm just gonna go ski my run in these. All right. And they were awesome. They were so good. And I didn't want to give them back. And I ended up stealing them away, or soon thereafter getting a pair. And they were so rad. Well, and everybody else thought they were rad too, because I ended up like leaving them to go to the bathroom and coming back out, and they were gone. And I was like so bummed. I'm like, where are my skis? And I told like everybody that I knew at Alpine Meadows, and I'd given them up for lost, and told everybody like, hey, those are prototypes. You will never see those anywhere else. If you see them, they're stolen. And the next day they were in the front of a resort. And I was like, oh,
you're kidding.
There they are.
Really?
Yeah, I got them back.
And
it was amazing. It was like,
and you don't know who took them?
No, I have no idea.
So funny.
No idea.
Well, people, and honestly, I think that one ski literally kind of started changing. I really point back to that ski is like sort of a changing time, because I mean, you had like Rozzy came out with the Mega Bang, and there was some stuff that was kind of coming from the Alpine world, and they were, starting to do graphics, but the Jack and KARHU was such an interesting time, because I mean, that ski was like, it wasn't even 100 underfoot, but it was, like you said, it was like this matte orange kind of rubbery top. Like it was really unique, and it stood out. And they had this whole series, with the Jack. They had Jack, there was the Rucket, if you remember. There was kind of the park ski, and that Pete Gallup was skiing on in the park. And then you had like the Rider. There was all these funky ones that kind of in that early KARHU days, but
the Gel.
Yep, Jill.
Remember the Gel, the women's ski? Yep,
totally.
Yeah.
But I mean, seeing you guys do that, and I think I always go back, like KARHU was really the first Telemark company that really just owned it, in my opinion. They owned it. They're like, we're a Telemark company. The imagery that they were pushing out, and I mean, it inspired me, because I ended up coming in just a tad later, but I remember seeing these images of you guys. I mean, there's that classic front flip of yours off, I don't even know what. That's like, I mean, how big was that? Like 70 some feet. You're doing a front flip, and they had like a sequence shot, that
was on the backside, the northeast ridge of Castle Peak. And that was, I think that was the first time I'd done a front flip off of a cliff.
What?
And I had skied this line. It was down this little spine, and I totally got too low and had to like sidestep back up. And I got to the top of this little notch, and I was going to ski down into the notch and then huck off the cliff. And I ended up, the snow was different than I thought. I just like got hung up a little bit and stopped in the throat. And I was standing there. I'm like, okay, I have 3 seconds, and if I don't make this worthwhile, it's never going to be in anything. So I just pointed it and just chucked the front flip and landed it, and skied out of this big plume of smoke and like in a telly stance. And Kevin Klein was down at the bottom, and he's like, oh, I got it.
Oh,
and it was just this moment. And I mean, that's really what I was, it was the moment that you're like, okay, did everything line up? And you're not just there trying to look as rad as you can, but you're like, okay, did I communicate correct? Like, did I tell you where I was going to be? And were you anticipating that? And did you have the angle? And did everything line up? And that was one of those moments where it lined up and was, I mean, I saw those pictures. I was like, no way. Oh, that's me? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Can you believe that? And then it was like the centerfold in Telemark Skier magazine. Yep. That was a highlight for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Cause I remember seeing that picture the first time, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, that is crazy. And honestly, he probably shot that on film, I would assume. It was probably not even on a digital camera. So to have this sequence shot that got put together, I mean, there was like a lot of work. Like you said, there's a lot of communicating. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that people don't realize.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yep. That's amazing, dude. Well, so I mean, in that we didn't really touch on it, but I mean, I think you were part kind of in that early group too that was around when Telemark skier was based out of Truckee because of Coular magazine, and we had Susie Sutphin on with Craig Dostie, and
nice.
it was cool reminiscing about that, and just again it really was kind of a heyday. I mean, you can put the Letterman jacket on, dude, and wear it. That's fine. I mean,
yes.
You guys were like, you guys were capturing a lot of stuff that was brand new. It wasn't like tele skiers were hucking front flips off massive cliffs and, doing stuff like that. It was really unique and historical in my opinion, so it's cool to think back, and it's cool to get the backstory too, like that it wasn't just like, oh yeah, I lined this up and did it. There was a lot of little backstory to it, that it wasn't necessarily perfect. I love that.
Susie Sutphin also, there's another one of my connections. Like, she was at Telemark Skier magazine. She would compete in the big mountain competitions, and we got to know each other, and then she got a job at Patagonia as their athlete manager. And as soon as I found that up, I called her up. I was like, hey, Susie, what are you doing? And she's like, funny, I was just about to call you. I was like, what? And started, that kind of opened up a huge window, and not only just sponsorship, but helping with the design of their winter line. And I mean, I remember bringing in a pair of Burton pants and being like, hey, you know how your pants are shorter in the front and longer in the back, and they kind of look like bell bottoms? We need to do something more like this. And I gave it to him. I was like, take this, do something similar to this, less like that. And like, they started making, they started making really good stuff. And it was super fun to be kind of involved in that. And then, they'd bring back the prototype, and you'd be like, oh, okay, this is good, that's good, but we can do better. We don't want to be a snowboard company, but we can do better in this, this, and this. And so adding their technical features, and but at the same time being involved with a company that was that was responsible or environmental, or had another, a secondary triple bottom line, was felt good, and felt like, that's always been a part of my thought process, is how I can have the least impact on the planet. So, it's definitely ironic and hypocritical to say that you are a skier and you ride on an airplane and you have been on a helicopter and you're an environmentalist, but at the same time, trying to also balance that and do things that you feel like are responsible as well. But that felt like that was something in that right direction. But it was neat to be a part of that as it started to develop.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And I think about when you talk about product development too, like that was one story I wanted to bring up was, we talk about the jack, but one of my memories of you was being up in Cook City, Montana, and you showed up with these black skis. Do you remember
the
this?
Black Mambas.
The Black Mambas.
Yeah,
exactly. And I remember being like, Lorenzo, what are those? And you've got this ski. Nobody knows what it is. There's no top sheet. It's a prototype. Like, I don't even know how you, like, I don't.
They like special shipped them. That was when we were living out of the RV, Ben and Max and I, and they like special shipped them to this. I forget how I picked them up, but it was an ordeal, and we ended up getting them. And then I think we mounted them in Salt Lake City in somebody's garage, and then drove up to Montana. And that was the first trip that I had used them. And I was like, oh, they're similar to the skis, and they were like a lot of the design was straight from Eric Pollard and the skis that he was making. And so I was like, oh, check these out. But they had a KARHU on the bottom. I don't know, the die cut KARHU into the base, in the base.
Yep.
And I think there was another shot where I did a front flip and the bases showed up, and I think it was Ted McGinnis maybe was like, oh, I knew that was, or Charlie Losner, one of those guys was like, oh, I knew we put that in there for a reason.
Yeah. And I think, and those, awesome. I think those, or, a version of those became the team KARHU Team 130s, I think, if I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was kind of the next phase of that whole thing was the Team 100, the Team 130, and you brought up Decker Jory, doing some graphics on some of that stuff, which was super cool. But dude, such a cool
fun,
time.
Yeah. It was neat to be involved in that conversation and to be like, the athletes were just like, no, we need that 130. And they're like, no, Telemark skiers can't ski on a 130. That's too wide. And that's not, you don't need that. And we just kept harping and harping and harping. And we're like, make them. Okay, we'll make 10 of them. Okay, well, if you make 10 of them, then people will see them and maybe they'll buy the Jack or maybe they'll buy the Team 100, but at least like, you'll make a splash. You'll be this company that's like going, and they went for it, and it was awesome. And I think they sold more than they thought they ever would. And it was fun to ski on them. I mean, it's definitely wide, and if it's not POW, you're working for it. But it was super fun to ski those skis.
Well, and I think you hit on the point that I think is probably the most important is like it was a Telemark company. They listened to not only the customers, but they were listening to like young athletes that were, out pushing it on the far end of the spectrum. And, graphically the images that were coming out, I mean, it was fresh. Like no one, I don't think anybody was really doing that. And any of those other companies that were around at the time, I think they were trying to mimic kind of this little independent company doing stuff, and obviously it helped because, KARHU and Line were tied together at that point. So there was some R&D that helped, but yeah, man, I think, I just think that was such a crucial time, with the competitions going on and the visibility of all of the KARHU team back then. I mean, it just, I always, yearn to see that again, like where there's something like that. So that's pretty cool to think back on that time.
Well, it was special as well because they weren't taking the meat out of their skis like the Telemark skis. A lot of times they would just take a ski design and they would take the metal out and call it a Telemark ski. And you'd have issues where you'd rip the bindings out, or they would, I don't know how many mega bangs I've seen snapped, because it was just foam core and people would ski them hard. But it was Titanol, like they kept the metal in those skis and they made it so that it would ski, that it was a charging ski that would absorb a lot of, the mank and junk that you would run into. And so you could ski fast with them. And it wasn't made for necessarily, 1,000 turns down a couloir. It was made for big, like ripping snowboard style turns, which was, a unique thing. And that's really where kind of my snowboard instruction and my teaching kind of came back in, where I felt like when you started to make those big, fast turns, you could kind of lean it over and it felt like you were on your toe edge of your snowboard. You just like lean a hand back. And I remember like BJ Brewer would be like dragging his hand and in the snow. And I just, like that sort of more backseat, laid back, almost snowboardy, surfy turn was, it was kind of a new style. It wasn't the style that my parents had skied for sure. And just felt new and different and really exciting and fun,
Yeah. Well, you couldn't do it on that old gear. I mean, even like 10 years before that, I mean, the equipment wouldn't, I mean, you could probably drag your hand, but it wasn't, like you said, I mean, that totally changed the style, for a lot of people in terms of how they looked at it. Like you said, it's more like a snowboard, toe side turn, surfy, and, super. I still think that's such an important time. I can't emphasize that enough because it's just like, I think about Telemark now and I'm like, it's like one of those things in history that happened. And if someone didn't know it, they might not know that it could have gone a totally different direction had like a little company like that not sort of like put it on the line, like you said, and making, I mean, it sounds crazy now to like, hey, we're going to take the metal out of your skis, and make them softer and kind of, make it so that you can ski easier. I don't know, like it's just a cool thing. Well, man. Well, and you kind of hit on a little bit. I mean, you were talking about being with Max and Ben. I had Ben on. We were talking about the Freehill Storm Tour, and I think Dolan's actually kind of like threw you under the proverbial RV, because I think he said it was your idea, if I remember right.
Yep.
Hopping in an RV that was probably from like the 1980s, and then you guys had like a weird camo spray paint thing going on the outside, if I remember right. But
that was super funny. Yeah,
but you lived in that for like a couple seasons or a season. I don't remember how long you guys did that for.
We kept meeting at competitions and stuff like that, and we kept talking about how we could ski more outside of these competitions, and we're like, how do we create this but not have to show up and hang out for 48 hours while we're competing, but actually create this in a longer like more extended format, and then make it into something that was more of a tour and more that we could, something that we could market. And we talked about, I think Ben had a camper. And so I was like, oh yeah, well that's kind of cool. And I started looking into RVs, and I had this very specific vision that when I look back now could have been a little different, because I was like, all right, it needs to be the bus front, or else it doesn't look like it's a real tour mobile. And it needs to have 6 individual beds so that you could fit at least 6 Telemark skiers in this thing who are super stinky and smelly and drunk most of the time, or on Red Bull or whatever. And they need to be able to throw their boots into the shower and have place for their gear, skis in the shower, boots in the shower. And we're not using the bathroom. That's just a ski locker room. And we're going to make a seat out of the we got sponsored by Red Bull, not to the helmet point of that, but like they were giving us product. I thought that was kind of another level that I was like, wow, I can't believe that. Telemark skiers sponsored by Red Bull. Who would have thought?
I didn't know that. That's funny.
And so, I had that image of this bus front, and I kept looking around for something that was within my budget. And my budget was, as long as I lived out of this thing for 3 years, I could break even. So if I didn't have a house for 3 years and I didn't pay rent anywhere, and I just lived out of this thing, then I would break even, and it would be a wash. And so that's what I looked for, is something that was less than rent for 3 years.
That's funny. I like that. As we're talking, I'm realizing how much of the aesthetic was part of the deal. Like it seems like you kind of had this like creative element to everything you're doing. It's like you're like trying to find the tour bus that looks like the tour bus. And
totally.
But you guys, I mean,
and the winter camo, we bought a bunch of spray paint, and we just like stopped in, somewhere in Nevada right after we picked up the RV and started cruising around. And Max and Ben and I were out there with spray paint and like putting all this like winter camo strip on the side. And then Max had a friend who did stickers, and we were trying to get companies to give us all this money. And we were like, well, you will only put your sticker on if you give us $5,000. And okay, well, we'll only put the sticker on if it's like $2,000. Okay, well, how about you just pay for the sticker, and then at least we can get free tickets at the ski resorts when we say we're sponsored. We're like a big deal. So it kind of like went from this big idea down a little bit lower to something less than huge, but it was really fun.
That's so
traveling around with those guys. And it was great. We ended up having a blast and meeting up with people all over the West and skiing with a bunch of different people. And I think we had 6 to 7 people in that for at least 1 week. Mostly it was the 3 of us, but we had it was crowded for a while.
That's amazing. I mean, and it really was kind of forward thinking, because I mean, during that time you got, I mean, you're one of the guys that was kind of involved in most of the film projects, I think, back then. I mean, you were in Unparalleled, you were in the Tough Guy movies, and you were in Ben and Max's Falling Forward productions, Falling Forward films. I mean, yeah, you were getting after it, man. I mean, it's cool to look. It's cool just to talk to you about it, because I think if you get like people were working. I mean, it's. I'm glad you kind of put it as like a sponsorship, as sort of like a padding. You know, it's like no one was really making a massive living off this, but it's cool to look back and think, you know, you were creating ideas and just kind of going out there and doing it, and you guys worked hard. I mean, there was a lot going on, and you guys were really trying to promote the sport to people and be creative too, you know? So I think that's kudos. I think that's just such a cool thing to look back on and think, you know, and it was kind of at a time where people could start making movies on their own too. I think people forget that. I mean, you went from like, you know, Bones is like making 16 millimeter films, and then all of a sudden you got these digital films coming out, and people are like, what, you can make a movie? You know? And I guess Max and Ben you guys did shoot on some Super 8, I remember, which was pretty wild, but the end of the analog generation, my friend.
Right. I know. I remember my son got a GoPro for Christmas or something, and Christmas, birthday, Christmas, you know, like 4 different whatever. There's a little pricey these days, but at the same time, I think about this little tiny box that you can stick anywhere, on your pole, on your helmet, whatever. It's all like battery, everything, playback. And I remember having a camera in my backpack with a cord to a lipstick camera taped to a pole that was up above my backpack that was like fall off half the time, and then another little remote that would stick out of there. And if the light wasn't blinking, then that meant it came unplugged, or it was in the wrong setting, and so you'd have to take it all out. And this is all while like standing on top of this line that you're really nervous about skiing, and you're like, oh my god, okay, is the camera? And half the time you'd be like, screw it, man, I don't care if it's, I'm just going. And Stefan would be like, what the hell, man, you didn't press the button. I'm like, I did 5 times, it didn't work. And now you're like, GoPro, film me. And it's like seamless, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a different time for sure. Oh man, that's so funny. Well, what just before we close out, I'm curious. So you're teaching school in Tahoe. Are you still freeing the heel, bro? We got to ask you that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got the black mambas in my closet. I'm waiting for a time to break them out.
Wow, you still have those? Oh, that's
yeah, I'm not going to throw those. Those are like a piece of history right there.
That is a piece of history.
I'm a little bit of a hoarder. Like, I definitely have tried to keep some of the relics from time past. I have the black mambas. The Empire was a G3 ski that I helped design, and kind of I didn't engineer or anything. I just wrote the design brief. I was like, I want this, and this. And they made something like that. And that's still around. They still have that in a carbon version that's skinnier, but I love it. I love freeing the heel. And, I have so many friends who are like, yeah, I kind of gave up telemark skiing because alpine touring is easier and lighter, and it's just less hassle, and I'm a glutton for punishment, or I just feel like when I make that telemark turn, it reminds me of all those experiences I had of skiing with my mom on 20-degree POW, on leather boots, to competing in competitions, to filming, it's such a part of my story of who I am that now it reminds me of that when I put them on my feet, and it's really, I don't see giving it up. And like, my son wants to go full telly this next year, and it just makes me really excited because it's something that I feel like is unique, in that most of what we do is like advancement of technology, and telemark skiing is one of those unique things where it's almost a shunning of technology because of whatever it is that attracts you to it, like the beauty of the turn, the feel of the turn, the community, whatever it is, it's something that you have to choose to go backwards in technology in order to use the gear and make the turn. It's just feels like a special thing that people choose because they want to make the choice, not because it's easy,
I love that, man. That's really cool. That's a good way to put it. And I love that your son's looking at doing it this year. That's super cool. And he's got a good teacher. So that I'm looking forward to seeing that. That'll be sweet.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate, dude, super good catching up and really appreciate you sharing the story and kind of filling in the blanks for me. And like I said, you're definitely someone I wanted to have on the podcast and just chop it up and kind of fill in the blanks. Cause and I know it, like you said, it sounds cheesy probably when I say certain things, but I think you're definitely one of those guys that was back during a time and around a lot of really important stuff in the progression of this. And, it's like, you could always think like, if that didn't happen, where would it be? But I'm pretty sure a lot of that stuff, man, it impacted and if nothing else, it inspired guys like me that came up right behind you. And man, it took me on a crazy journey and I'm still here. So, I mean, it did something, and I think that's all it takes is just, the young energy and people putting their time into it because they love it. And I don't know, so many cool things have come out of that timeline. So I appreciate you sharing the whole story with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have to shout out my daughter too, though, because she's got super short 3-pin bindings on there and she's dabbling as well.
Oh, sweet.
So it's fun to be part of the history, but also part of the future,
I love that. And we need it. We need more young people. So that's good to hear that there's a new crop in Tahoe coming up. So I'm excited to see that. Well, yeah. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on. And we got to get out and do some skiing. It's been too long. So hopefully we can make that happen sooner than later.
Absolutely. And thank you for all you've been doing. It's huge debt of gratitude to you as well for keeping this spirit alive and for all the effort that you put into it. So thank you.
Thanks, brother. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Sounds good.
Oh, yeah. Episode 100 is in the bag. Super great conversation with Lorenzo. I'm so stoked that he came on. Like I said, he's kind of one of those figures in sort of modern Telemark history that I've always kind of wanted to know his backstory, kind of how he, I knew some of the pieces and other things I was kind of curious about. And, guys like him really made an impact, and shaped a lot of how things, in my opinion, why Telemark looks the way it does now. Because a lot of these guys were pushing the equipment and managed to get companies to listen to them. And, they were just stoking people out in general in the movies and the magazines. I know I was one of those people, and I'm super grateful that those things that those guys were doing inspired me. And what a great guest to have on for the 100th episode of the Free Heel Life podcast. Super pumped and super great conversation. So before I let you guys go, always I like to remind you, get on the mailing list. It's a great way where you don't have to be on your computer for too long, but we email you a bunch of information, what's going on in the shop, what's going on the YouTube channel, what premium content just came out on telemarkskier.com, all sorts of stuff. And it's just a great way to be part of our Free Heel Life community and our family and find out everything in one place without having to scroll through your phone for hours on end trying to figure out what's going on. So check that out. It's in the show notes below. We'd love to have you there. As always, we got gear at the shop, and it's coming in: boots, skis, bindings, going like hotcakes. So be sure to check it out. Shop at freeheellife.com. And if you have questions, you can reach out to the crew. customer service at freehilllife.com. Over on the Telemark skier side of the house, Craig Dossey's busting out content. It's amazing. He's doing a great job. We hope that you are a premium subscriber over there as well and becoming part of that growing community of Telemark skiers and supporting Telemark content directly from the people. There's no advertisements, other than us talking about our own stuff in the shop. But it is the place to get your news about Telemark, the larger snow community, specific Telemark gear reviews, your boots, your bindings. We've got a simple binding guide you can check out. There's all sorts of great stuff, and we would love for you to be a part of it with us so that we can keep building that up and making it better every year. As for me, tell me what you liked about episode 100 or any of the episodes. I would love to hear from you. Or maybe you have a question. We haven't done a mailbag episode in a while, but you can reach out to me directly at podcast@freehilllife.com. I would love to hear from you. And if you don't want to email, that's cool too. If you're an Apple Podcast person, maybe pop on over there, leave a rating and a review. That helps get the podcast out in front of more people. It helps share Telemark with more people. And I just love that you guys are listening. Thank you so much for supporting this for so many episodes every Monday. And I'll be back with, crazy enough, episode 101 next week. So make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you check them out. And until next week, brothers and sisters of the turn, spread Telemark always.